The game is good. So go online, get yourself a copy. Alright? You good? Okay, video's over now. Bye! Alright, so that was a short answer to the question, is this portable Crash game any good? If you want the long answer, you want to get to know the specifics, then I welcome you to stick around for the rest of this video. Let's get into it. A few weeks ago, I shared a photo on the UBGIG, the Instagram, in which I said that this game was basically like a greatest hits collection of the original Crash PlayStation trilogy. And that's another way to summarize what this game is. It takes elements from each of the 3 games and it mixes them all together like you're trying to make an overpowered potion on the alchemy lab in Skyrim. And what you get is a predictable and delicious concoction that I think would satisfy the average Crash fan. The same enemies are here, the ugly-ass, glasses-wearing, anorexic, white guys with flamethrowers in the factory levels, the robotic things that will electrocute you from above or below with their tentacles, the giant magenta birds that fly at you, and even the purple piranha plants, which I didn't realize that the Crash series copied from the Mario games until I started writing this script. And yes, I realize they don't look exactly the same, you don't have to point that out. And I replayed and completed Crash 2 a few years ago, so that game is still pretty fresh in my mind, and a few levels of the first and third games on the Insane Trilogy, but other than that, I haven't played through the first and third games since I was a toddler. So I'm left wondering just where these giant radioactive dildos first appeared in the series, and why they thought that it was okay for kids to see in an otherwise tame game. Since this is Crash on the go, however, it obviously isn't exactly the same as the trilogy. The main difference here is that the entirety of the game, with few exceptions, plays in linear, 2D, left-to-right traditional form. So basically, Sonic's ass game, originally conceived to compete with the then mainly 2D Sonic and Mario games, took a page out of both franchises and focused on being flat and traditional. And if you've played the trilogy before, you know that the games all had levels that you played on 2D planes, such as the bonus levels, so it's not actually something that's new in a Crash game, it just happens to make up the whole game as opposed to just bits and pieces of it. All in all, there's about 4 or 5 different themes to the levels. You have the jungle ones, underwater ones, the factory ones, and ones in which you fly with a jetpack, because it wouldn't be a Crash game if Crash didn't get to use a gadget or two, right? I think these flying ones might actually be the most challenging levels in the game, because you're constantly trying to dodge all manner of bombs, rockets, and Nazi planes, while you're also trying to shoot them down, because it's impossible to rely on just dodging. There's also the boss battles, and these are the same kind of boss battles you've seen before in the previous titles. Swim to one side, or jump to another platform, or avoid a laser or rocket, and spin to attack when Tiny, Dingodile, Cortex, or Engine stop moving and are obviously vulnerable. 1 or 2 of these might take a few tries to get through, but again, I found the flying levels much more challenging than any of the boss battles. Crash does 2D as well as 3D. Whoa! Who would have thunk it? Now, if only Sonic would finally get his shit together after so many awful 3D games and actually star in a great 3D game. And since this is on the glorious, wonderful Game Boy Advance, everything is sprite work as opposed to those classic blocky polygons from the originals, and it gets the job perfectly done. When developers and art designers put effort into their sprite work, everything looks good, and sprites are a timeless kind of art in my opinion. So 16 years later, I'd say that this is right at home with any other platformer of its time, and even at home with modern 2D platformers of today. I mean, it's 2D platforming we're talking about here. It doesn't get any more timeless in gameplay than that. You move, you jump, you attack stuff, etc. You know how it goes. There is a story to this game, but it's the typical basic story to any Crash game. Uka Uka and Cortex are back, and Uka is understandably upset because Cortex is an idiot that can't finish off an athletic marsupial with autism. So what does he do? He shrinks a planet to the size of a grapefruit, as Aku Aku puts it. And in typical comic book-esque fashion, Coco tells Crash to go fetch some crystals so she can make a device that will enlarge the planet again, and off we all go to fetch crystals for the 5th time, I believe, since this came out after the Wrath of Cortex. And now I'm left wondering, Coco, can your device enlarge other things besides planets? I can't say that I really have any gripes with the game. The gameplay gets the job done, even if the controls and hit detection are definitely different from any of the console games. I found that I died more frequently in this one because the controls are a bit more touchy, more sensitive. So I would unintentionally fall off platforms or run into enemies as I was heading towards them and was sure that I could jump over them or spin them away. There were times in which I would try to double jump, but you have to time the jump exactly as the game wants you to, or you fall to your death. But these are very minor things, and once I got to the final battle against Cortex, I still finished the game with just over 70 lives, more than 80 in the second playthrough, which I did here on my tablet so I could record this game footage for you. So it's got that in common with most Mario games, in that you have an overabundance of lives if you're at least decent at platformers. Then there's the matter of the music. There's a couple of tunes in this one that were taken straight from the trilogy, which is awesome, and that's if this music isn't all from the trilogy. Again, I haven't played 2 of the 3 in over a decade and a half, so if this is the case, you're welcome to point it out with a comment. Anyway, the music is a mixed bag. I like 2 or 3 of the tracks way more than I do the rest, but if you play the game enough, some are bound to get stuck in your head long after you've played through it. My personal favorite track, and one of the originals, is the one that plays in the jungle levels, and maybe the one from the snow levels as well. Here, I'm on the snow level right now, take a listen. So that is Crash Bandicoot: The Huge Adventure for Game Boy Advance. It's a perfectly predictable serving of Crash Bandicoot, but on the go. And really, when you're talking about such a classic and beloved character, can you really ask for anything more than that? Thanks for tuning in to this one, and if you'd like to tune in some more in the future, subscribe, maybe even hit the bell icon to get notified for the new, mostly weekly videos, and you can find the channel on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at the links in the description. But with that out of the way, once again, thanks for watching, and don't be shy in leaving your own comments expressing your fondness for Crash, because you'll always be one of gaming's most iconic and cherished characters.